attempting to control the protest. David Kagina reports.
5 human rights groups have strongly condemned the actions of police officers that resulted in the loss of life. They are urging the Ministry of Interior, the Director of Public Prosecutions, the Inspector General of Police and the National Intelligence Service to expedite investigations into those identified as perpetrators of these heinous acts. The violence led to at least 41 fatalities and over 300 injuries.
The protests that we have witnessed have laid bare the variance between the government's hollow declaration on commitment to uphold the Constitution and its conduct and actions that continue to undermine and violate human rights and the rule of law. This situation is compounded by an entrenched culture of impunity where blatant constitutional and human rights violations are rarely met with accountability or meaningful remedies for affected victims.
The protesters and their supporters have not only been targeted on the streets, but also through clandestine abductions, enforced disappearances, incommunicado detention, and in most cases, subsequent release without being brought before the court of law.
Among the 6 recommendations made by the human rights defenders are the immediate release of those arbitrarily detained during the demonstrations, the filing of formal charges against those accused of specific offences within 24 hours, the withdrawal of all lethal crowd control weapons, including live ammunition. They advocate for prioritization of non-violent methods to ensure public order and safety during protests.
1. Cease all abductions, enforced and involuntary disappearances. 2. Cease surveillance, threat and intimidation of human rights defenders and civil society actors. 3. Provide adequate security measures to counter the infiltration of criminal elements and facilitate the exercise of the right to peaceful protest by all citizens.
Additionally, they have called upon the Independent Police Oversight Authority (IPOA) to swiftly investigate and prosecute individuals responsible for the excessive use of force and lethal weapons that led to deaths and injuries.
In recognition of existing laws, the government's constitutional obligations, and established international human rights and criminal law norms, we ask that the investigations and prosecutions should be broad enough to encompass liability against superior security officers who fail to respond or to prevent violations committed by their subordinates under their watch.
These demands come amidst ongoing concerns about the disappearance of at least 34 people whose whereabouts remain unknown.
Civil society actors and human rights defenders offering critical support to affected victims involved in advocacy for accountability have not been spared. There are increasing incidents of security surveillance and threats against these actors, creating a direct affront to the rights of the affected individuals and a chilling effect that has the potential to stifle sector effectiveness.
This coincides with the President's pledge to reach out to families affected by the demonstrations. David Kagina, K24, Nairobi.
And as pressure continues to mount on President William Ruto by Gen Z, the head of state has once again given in to their demands. The president announced austerity measures that includes reducing the number of government advisors by 50% and suspending the employment of chief administrative secretaries. The report on President Ruto's forced hand bending to the youth's direction.
Opulence in government, a bloated executive and a budget bigger than the nation's revenue are some of the issues that have been a subject of conversation in the nation. President William Ruto has been arm-twisted with the nation's youngest population, and now the head of state is meeting the people's demands. The way forward for the Ruto-led administration has been spelled out, cutting down on spending, and as a result, the head of state announced several measures including abolishing of 47 state corporations, reducing government advisors by 50%, scrapping off the budget for the office of the First Lady Rachel Ruto, the Second Lady Pastor Dorcas Rigathi, and spouse of Prime Cabinet Secretary Tessie Mudavadi.
47 state corporations with overlapping and duplicating functions will be dissolved, resulting in the elimination of their operational and maintenance costs, and their functions will be integrated into the respective line ministries. Staff currently employed by the affected corporations will be transferred to ministries and other state agencies within government. The decision to fill the position of Chief Administrative Secretaries is hereby suspended.
The austerity measures have also been extended to public service, with public servants who have attained the age of 60 instructed to go on retirement without extension.
The budget provisions for confidential budgets in various executive offices, including my own office, have been removed, and the budget for renovations across government reduced by 50%. Henceforth, public servants who attain the retirement age of 60 shall be required to immediately proceed on retirement with no extensions to their tenure of service whatsoever.
State and public officers with a penchant for flaunting their wealth will now be forced to keep it a secret after the head of state banned Harambes, which has been the order of the day during weekends.
No state officer or public servant shall participate in public contributions or Harambes going forward. The Attorney General is hereby directed to prepare and submit legislation to this effect and develop a mechanism for structured and transparent contributions for public, charitable, and philanthropic purposes. These measures will be followed by changes in government that I will be making shortly.
On the issue of public debt, which is now oscillating at 10.1 trillion, the head of state has appointed an 8-member task force to spearhead a forensic audit of Kenya's public debt, with the task force expected to table its report within 3 months.
This audit will provide the people of Kenya with clarity on the extent and nature of our debt, how public resources have been expended, and will also recommend proposals for managing our public debt in a manner that is sustainable and does not burden future generations.
The task force includes the former IMF Director Office of Internal Audit Nancy Onyango, who has been appointed as the chairperson, Professor Louise G. Franceschi as vice chairperson. The members include CPA Philip Kakai, who is the chairperson of FISPAC, Faith Odhiambo, who is the president of LSK, Engineer Shama Kiteme, who is the president IEK, and Vincent Kimosop. The task force will also include 2 joint secretaries, including Dr. Abraham Mugo. The move by the head of state seeks to quell rising temperatures in the country.
Kitu yenye nataka kukuambia kama unanisikiza, wachaka kukojea maneno ikiiva kwanza, watu wakikuaibisha kwanza ndio unashituka kwa usingizi, unaanza kusema ati nimetoa hii. Yaani hukuona kama Wakenya wanaumia.
Mheshimiwa Rais, kama ungali mzima, kama ungali kwa rais wa nchi hii, tafadhali sikiza maoni ya watu, usipuuze maoni ya watu, vitu viharibike ndio kuja waamke chini kwanza kusema tunaongea.
Pressure mounted by the public has forced the head of state to relook into his government spending, effecting changes that are supposed to cut across board. Brian Amoai, K24, State House, Nairobi.
Well, thank you, Brian Mai, for that. And also the head of state engaged with Kenyan youths on the X Space session that drew listeners primarily from Generation Z. In the state-organized X Space, Kenya's youth accused the president of neglecting their issues and failing to deliver on his campaign promises. And as Ben Kirira now reports, the Gen Z also expressed dissatisfaction with the Ruto's government's response to the recent nationwide protest. Let's take a listen.
President William Ruto has faced severe criticism for the deaths of Kenyans during the anti-government protests sparked by the controversial finance bill.
When the police arrest somebody, they must declare to that person that they are policemen, they are arresting this person for this and that and that and that, and they take him to a place that is known.
Huyu askari amekuwa kiwa watu kwa maandamano atashukua siku gani? Kwa vile amekuwa kirom freely tangu last month amekuwa to all over the city. Tulikuwa tunataka kujua atashukua siku gani, kwa vile ilikuwa inasemekana amekuwa hivyo tangu kitambo na sio wa kwanza. We just need answers about him.
That is a matter that I will take up and I will deal with it.
The 2-hour conversation with the head of state has highlighted the youth's dissatisfaction with the president's performance over the last 2 years, seemingly going the opposite direction with what he promised during his campaign.
I have every intention to make sure that as many Kenyans as possible have an opportunity to have an income so that they can contribute meaningfully to the development of our country.
A month ago or so, in the dailies, there was a freeze that the public service is not hiring anymore. What are you trying to tell young people, yet you say each and every day you want to ensure that we give jobs?
Despite Ruto's efforts to highlight his achievements, such as reducing fertilizer prices, increasing the judiciary's budget, and improving primary health systems, the youth remained unimpressed.
I'm wondering, is the change from NHF to SHIF, will it improve or just another way to get more money for people around your circle to buy houses, buy big cars and laugh at us?
They demanded accountability and action against corrupt leaders who flaunt their wealth amidst a struggling economy.
When we saw your friends and very close associates working with bands of money, 10, 20 million in churches, Mr. President, I think you sabotage your own presidency.
While President Ruto noted the fiscal dent that Kenya shall suffer as a result of the finance bill not being ascended to law, Kenyans on X made clear importance of consideration of public views in such bills. The president, as he has done in multiple other instances, promised that corrupt leaders shall face the law, that all Kenyans shall have an optimally serving health insurance, and that Kenya shall enjoy up to 10 million tourists in the next 5 years. Ben Kirira, K24, Nairobi.
And the Kenya Kwanza government and its leader, President William Ruto, came under fire during the funeral of fallen Gen Z protester Rex Kanyike Masai at Kamudhanga in Machakos County. Leaders present, led by Kalonzo Musyoka and Eugene Wamalwa, demanded justice for Rex alongside with the other fallen Gen Zs countrywide. And as our reporter Lectine Odera tells us, Gen Z who turned up for the final send-off of their colleague vowed not to relent in their quest for justice and change in the country's leadership.
The vibrant generation in giving their last tributes to the late Masai, whom they termed together with other Gen Zs that died during the anti-government demos as Kenya's heroes who were fighting for their rights.
Your determination was a force of nature, a relentless